So I got early access to Lauma, and I feel like I'm going crazy here because last time I checked, she's based on Lithuanian goddess Lauma, but she looks, different from the way my home country Lithuania depicts her. Guess Hoyo decided to improve her looks. Anyway, besides the new facelift, Lauma is also going to redefine how we look at Bloom teams because, boy oh boy, the upgrade is quite insane. Not only that, she's bringing back from the dead some off-meta units, and surprisingly enough, she's even good outside your typical Blooms and Hyper Blooms. However, Lauma also introduces a new dilemma. The new Nodgrai moon sign mechanic can work both for and against her, and I think that's pretty intriguing, trying to find the balance when playing with 1 or 2 Nodgrai units of the team. But yeah, in this Constellation Zero Lauma showcase video, I am going to cover all of these things I've just mentioned, plus I'll also showcase her damage potential, including the new Nodgrai weapons, as well as all the builds I've tried out. Most importantly, I'll tell you exactly how much of an improvement Lauma is to existing Bloom teams, and in which other comps she excels in. Okay, so first of all, this video contains footage from the creator experience server, which means content shown here is subject to change. Now before we get to her talents and damage showcase, I just want to quickly show you Lauma's impact on Bloom related reaction teams. For example, in this typical Hyper Bloom comp, without her, Hyper Bloom reactions on average hit for about 33,000 damage. Could be more, could be less, depending on the build, but once we put Lauma in the team, now the Hyper Bloom hits for about 45,000 or so, when she's using a free-to-play weapon. And then, get this, thanks to her, the reactions can also score critical hits, and here, Hyper Bloom ends up dealing about 90,000 damage, resulting in over 2.7 times higher damage than you'd normally do. And then if you use her signature catalyst, now the Hyper Bloom deals over 50k damage, and critical hit scores over 100,000 damage. Pretty crazy stuff. On average, it looks like she improves Hyper Bloom teams by about 30 to 50%, which is massive if you think about it. Same goes for Nilo Bloom teams. Average Bloom goes from 42k to 55k or more damage with Lauma, and then critical hits can even go upwards of 110,000 damage. Safe to say, this is a very serious upgrade to these existing teams, and I'll talk about this a lot more once we get to the team section. But for now, let's take a look at how she actually works. Alright, so she can be built in many different ways, and currently, she'll be using the upcoming event weapon Aetherlight Spindle Loot, since it's a really strong free-to-play option. It provides energy recharge from the substat, which in most cases will matter for her when doing endgame content, while the passive gives a massive 200 elemental mastery boost when she uses her skill. And then, as for the artifact set, she's equipped with the new Silken Moon Serenade set, with triple EM main stats. But you could go for ER Sands instead, or Critical Rate Goblet, but essentially, this new set gives 20% energy recharge from the 2-set bonus, and 60 or 120 elemental mastery for the whole team after dealing damage. The amount depends whether there's 1 or 2 Nodgrai units in the team, and again, I'll talk about this more in the team section. Oh, and also, this set and the other new DPS set each gives 10% damage boost for lunar reactions. Keep in mind, I will showcase her with various different loadouts, including Deepwood and Gilded Dream sets, plus many other weapons. Besides that, her talents are all raised to level 9, and of course, she's Constellation Zero. Okay, so starting with normal attacks, as expected, this 3-hit combo won't deal much damage, but it will matter when you need to utilize these attacks for Dendro application. And then as for the charge attack, when you use it, she actually turns herself into this Spirit Envoy, or a Centaur perhaps? Anyway, this form lasts for 10 seconds, and she can even do a double jump. However, I'd say the travel speed compared to other units from Natlan is slower, but she can cover a good distance. And then once this form is over, it goes into 4-second cooldown, and while it's recovering, you can use her regular charge attacks. But in reality, even if you cancel out the form early, I don't see her using this charge attack much in combat. Anyway, moving over to the elemental skill, when tapped, a small amount of initial damage is dealt, and then every 2 seconds, this deer she summons deals AoE damage within the skill's radius while following the active character. Most importantly, when enemies are hit by the skill, even if she's off-field, their Hydro and Dendro resistance will be reduced by 22.5% at level 9 or 25% at level 10. I probably don't have to tell you this, but you'll definitely want to crown this talent ASAP. Also, since the skill lasts for 15 seconds and resistance shred lasts for 10 seconds, effectively, this resistance reduction duration is 25 seconds, assuming the enemy receives the last hit. So this is a very long and flexible duration. Like, this debuff alone is why she's amazing in so many teams. Now, she can also cast the hold version of the skill, but for that, we need to first take a look at her third passive ability. So, when Lauma is in the team, any bloom reaction will be instead converted to Lunar Bloom, and What does it do? Well, by itself, it does nothing. The blooms that are generated on the ground still deal bloom reaction damage. The only new thing this reaction does is that when Lunar Bloom is triggered by anyone, this new unique resource called Verdant Dew will be generated over 2.5 seconds, which means it takes about 7.5 seconds to obtain a maximum of 3 Verdant Dew while Lunar Blooms are still being triggered. And let me be clear, Verdant Dew is shared across the team. You can see it right below the portraits here. Think of it like loading up bullets, similar to how Navia obtains them, except these bullets belong to everyone. However, the only one who can consume Verdant Dew is, well, obviously Lauma. And so, as long as the team has 1 Verdant Dew, you can then hold down the skill, and for each Verdant Dew, she will consume them and deal a big number of damage. Usually it's about at least 100,000 with an average build, but it can easily go up to 200,000 with signature or other buffs. This damage scales with Lauma's elemental mastery, and then this multiplier is stacked on top of each other for each Verdant Dew consumed. So, long story short, Lunar Bloom right now is only relevant for Lauma's hold skill damage and effects. And yes, you probably noticed that in this case, the skill actually deals Lunar Bloom damage. It's similar to how Innefa's Brigade can trigger Lunar Charge, which scales with attack, so in this case, the formula is kinda the same, enemy's defense is ignored, and from this table shown, the difference is that this specific and the only case of Lunar Bloom damage Lauma deals scales with Elemental Mastery instead. By the way, just like Innefa, this passive can be easily maxed out with 800 Elemental Mastery on Lauma to obtain extra 14% Lunar Bloom damage boost, which will only matter to her hold skill damage. But besides that, as you can see, hold skill also summons the deer that keeps hitting enemies every 2 seconds. Now, that's not the only thing this hold skill does. It also converts each Verdant Dew consumed into Moonsong stack. And what is Moonsong stack used for? It's for the burst. So, for the cost of 60 energy, Lauma's burst does this cool animation, and wait, nothing happened? Where's the damage? Well, it just so happens that the burst itself deals no damage, and instead, it generates 18 Pale Hymn stacks. These Pale Hymn stacks are then consumed by anyone in the team whenever they deal Bloom, Hyper Bloom, Burgeon, or Lunar Bloom damage. And similar to how Shenhe's quills work, Lauma will boost these reactions damage based on her elemental mastery. And keep in mind, if multiple enemies are hit, each one consumes the stack. But to be honest, 18 Pale Hymn stacks is not much. It will quickly get devoured by the team. I think you know where I'm going with this. So yeah, those Moonsong stacks Lauma obtains from the hold version of the skill, when the burst is casted, they are immediately converted to Pale Hymn. Each Moonsong gives 6 Pale Hymns, or a total of 18 Pale Hymn stacks can be obtained this way. In fact, even after the burst is casted, if within 15 seconds you use her hold skill, she still immediately converts all Moonsong obtained to Pale Hymn. And this will be relevant in some team rotations. Sometimes you can optimize the overall damage by first using her burst, and then later using her hold skill. Because the thing is, each Pale Hymn stack is tracked separately for 15-second duration. So you can do some workarounds to fully utilize all these stacks even after the burst is casted. But yeah, in total, you can obtain up to 36 Pale Hymn stacks or empower the next 36 Bloom-related reactions. And as I said in the beginning, while these are really big-looking multipliers that take Lauma's EM to boost the reaction damage, in reality, it translates to about 30 to 40% boost for both Blooms and Hyper Blooms with Burgeon, which is still insanely good. And of course, Lauma's hold skill, which is the only source that deals Lunar Bloom damage right now, can also be boosted by this Pale Hymn buff. Now, there's also the second passive talent, but it's like whatever. Based on how much EM she has, her skill damage can be improved by up to 32%, or it maxes out at 800 EM, but this won't improve her hold skill damage, which is her hardest hitting attack. And then the Travel Form's cooldown can be reduced by up to 20%, or maxes out at 1000 EM, so it's really just there to make exploration faster. Finally, we have the first passive talent. When Lauma uses her skill, doesn't matter if it's tap or hold version, for 20 seconds, depending on the moon sign level, the team gains the following buffs. At moon sign level 1, Blooms, Hyper Blooms, and Burgeon reactions can now score critical hits with a 15% critical rate chance and fixed 100% critical damage. If you ever looked at Nahida's second constellation, this is almost identical, except Little Archon's critical rate boost is 20%. However, you can actually stack both Nahida's C2 and this passive for a total of 35% critical rate, but crit damage will remain at 100%. Now, if Moonsign is level 2, then instead, Lunar Bloom damage gains 10% critical rate and 20% critical damage boost. Right now, this only matters for Lauma's hold skill, but if in the future there's gonna be a Notgraya unit who specializes in a lot of Lunar Bloom damage, this will be really good. Still, you're probably wondering, what the heck is Moonsign anyway? Well, if we open up the team's menu, you can actually now navigate to this new tab where we can see the overview. And basically, so far, Innefa, Lauma, and Aino each increase Moonsign level by 1. And currently, if Moonsign is level 1, then everyone in the team gains Nascent Gleam effect, which by itself does nothing. But for example, Lauma's first passive refers to it, and this is how Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon can start scoring critical hits. However, if Moonsign level is 2, then the team gains Ascendant Gleam effect, which again could be referred by other talents or even equipment. For example, the new support set gives 120 EM if the team has Ascendant Gleam instead of 60 when it's only Nascent Gleam. And there's even this new craftable catalyst Black Marrow Lantern that gives extra 24% Lunar Bloom damage if the team has Ascendant Gleam. Still, besides that, Ascendant Gleam actually gives an ability for non-Moonsign characters to improve lunar reaction damage by up to 36% when they cast their skill or burst. But this buff can't stack and caps out at 36%. And as shown here, depending from which element the unit triggered this new team ability, one of their stats will be taken into account. And I've made a quick reference table for you to see how much of each stat is needed to cap out at 36%. But yeah, going back to Lauma's first passive, we have a dilemma. You cannot gain both of these effects because, essentially, the Bloom, Hyper Bloom, and Burgeon critical hits can only be enabled if she's the only Nodcry unit in the team. If you add Aino or Innefa, this buff disappears, and then only Lunar Bloom critical rate and damage is boosted. So, which one is better then? Well, let's talk about this next. Alrighty, first order of business. Let's examine Lauma's personal damage potential when she's in a fully built Hyper Bloom team with all the relevant buffs active. We're going up against Knuckle Duckle, the new world boss, who is a pretty decent punching bag. With the loadout shown down below, Lauma's overall damage contribution ends up about 500,000, but I am taking into account here the increased Hyper Bloom damage from the Pale Hymn stacks. Without that, only her skill contributes to damage, and then it would be around 200k total. Also, keep in mind, this overall damage can wildly differ depending on how lucky you were with critical Hyper Blooms. It can easily grow into almost 1,000,000 damage contribution if the stars align, but we're looking at the most average outcome here. Now, surprisingly enough, her other 4-star weapon options like Sacrificial Fragments and Black Marrow Lantern end up contributing to about the same amount of damage. However, if using her signature, then the performance shoots up to about 20% overall improvement, which is quite big. It's also funny how some 5-star options like Nahida's or Citlali's signature weapons are not much better than just 4-star weapons. But overall, Lauma's personal contribution, especially if we count the increased reaction damage, is quite big, and no wonder she significantly boosts these teams. Still, there is one critical thing I want to point out. During the first rotation in places like Abyss or Stygian, even if Lauma is the last one in the rotation, usually by the time she casts her hold skill, only 1 or 2 Verdant Dew will be obtained. So as a workaround, you could start the rotation with tap skill, do all the stuff with others, and by the time you get to her, cast the burst, and hopefully by then 3 Verdant Dew will be obtained. If not, you can wait a little longer once it's full and then use hold skill, since Pale Hymns will still be generated after it. But with that being said, let's talk about the team comps briefly. For Hyper Bloom teams, she will always be an upgrade over any other single Dendro unit, and any teams you've played before, Lauma can now be easily used in them. For example, you can use her in the classic Alhaitham, Xingqiu, and Cookie team comp, or go for a free-to-play variation such as Fischl, Xingqiu, and Sucrose. Or you can even dip into Double Hydro with Yelan and Xingqiu. The world is your oyster. Any previous Hyper Bloom team basically just gets upgraded with Lauma. However, when it comes to new team comps, let's just say Oratrice Mécanique d'Analyse Cardinal guy yet again keeps on winning. That's right, playing Nuvi along with Farina and Innefa is actually quite good. But remember, Hyper Blooms no longer can cause a critical hit, and I would say this is the only case for Hyper Bloom comps where running another Nodicrai unit makes sense, since while the reaction's potential damage decreases, Lauma does gain other benefits, mostly to do with her personal DPS. If let's say you're using Black Marrow Lantern, and then the new Nodicrai artifact set, it will now give everyone 120 EM. Plus, her hold skill will hit for a much higher Lunar Bloom damage. Still, I'd say based on my own personal experience, it seems like running double Nodicrai units in Nilo Bloom teams also felt pretty good. And by that, of course, I mean Aino. Now, she's mostly there to help enable the Bloom reactions with her burst, while Lauma's personal damage will be higher. However, because Nilo teams are a nightmare to calculate, ask any theory crafter and they'll say the same, The thing is, I found that Nilo, Nahida, Lauma, and another Hydra unit like Kokomi felt the strongest. This is where the team's DPS truly skyrockets, and I'm talking about single target damage potential. Everyone knows that Nilo Bloom is best against multiple targets, but thanks to Lauma, now it's also amazing against just big dumb bosses or enemies. Seriously, it shreds them like a paper. And yeah, you might have noticed, Nahida is working together with Lauma here. Well, at least for Nilo Bloom teams, they are perfect for each other. Due to so much Dendro application, usually it will be the Hydro unit dealing Bloom damage, and Lauma's hold skill can reach some big numbers as well. Now, one problem that's always been present in Nilo Bloom teams was survivability. Due to Blooms causing recoil damage, without a healer in the team, it is possible in places like Abyss that the team will be wiped out. Sure, you can avoid most of damage with invincibility frames during something like burst animation or dashing, but for newer players, this could be a problem. And right now, Kokomi is kinda the best option to stay alive, but there's also good old Barbara, you'll just need to hug the enemies with her, or Nuvelette since he self-heals, or running one of the Catalyst users with Prototype Amber to restore some HP can be useful. But you know who else can heal, well, heal themselves at least? Kave. That's right, this guy is actually making his big comeback because thanks to his passive, and especially if you have his C1 unlocked, he can just tank through the Bloom recoil damage like it's nothing. His self-healing is insane, and you can even slap on him the not so long ago released Claymore for that extra free-to-play goodness. But yeah, Nilo Bloom teams are thriving thanks to Lauma. While it's hard to say the exact number right now, but after so many test runs, the improvement in overall team damage seems to be about 40% on average. Maybe less, maybe more, but this alone makes this team archetype so good, it's now strong enough to beat single target bosses with ease. But keep in mind, footage I've shown from Abyss will be the next upcoming cycle, and it gives a big boost to Bloom related reactions on the second side. But even removing that from the equation, Lauma's buffing and support damage is still superb. Still, what about other teams? Well, I like this interesting team with Kinich. Lauma is specifically using TTDS to buff him, so along with her resist and shred, he can deal some strong damage before the buff runs out. As for Burgeon, while it also became better thanks to her, it's not as significant upgrade as Hyper Bloom or Nilo Bloom teams, and it mostly has to do with the current roster, or should I say, current pyro unit options. Finally, I also like this Burn Vape Mulani team. By using Movwika and then Yalan or Silali, this team mostly benefits from Lauma's Hydro Resistance Shred while the enemy is burning, plus she can be equipped with something like Instructor set, or just use the new Nodikrai support set. Overall, as a Dendro unit, you can put Lauma in any of the previously popular teams that use Dendro support, and she will then suddenly make the team much better. I also didn't mention this while showcasing, but normally, in a lot of teams, Lauma will be running deep with set, especially for Hyper Bloom comps, unless you put this out on someone else. However, the new Silken Moon Serenade set actually works with anyone because it only cares about moon sign level, so you can interchange these sets between the units if needed, although I'd still put this new set on Lauma since it gives her energy recharge, and in Hyper Bloom teams, she will need a lot of energy, while the requirements become lower in Nilo Bloom teams. So, what do I think about Lauma? Manau, kad ji tikrai gražesnė dabar. No, but seriously, the time I spent playing with her, it's easy to see how powerful she is for Bloom teams. It also helps a lot that the two new free-to-play weapons, the upcoming event Catalyst Spindelute and the Nodikrai craftable Black Marrow Lantern, are amazing for her. By the way, in Nilo Bloom teams, Black Marrow is better utilized by Kokomi since she will be the one triggering most blooms, which is kind of funny. But other than that, I also wanted to quickly mention her C1. It's kind of meh, to be honest, because aside from increasing her Spirit Envoy exploration time, she also kind of becomes a healer since when Lunar Bloom reaction gets triggered, she will heal the team for 500% of her EM every 1.9 second, usually resulting in pretty chunky heals, and this is mostly going to be relevant for Nilo Bloom teams when there's no other healer in the team, or I guess this also becomes good in that Innefa Nui Farina team I've mentioned. I won't be covering other constellations right now, and instead, I will publish my full Lauma guide including constellation pull value on her release day, so hopefully I'll see you there because I only covered so little to be honest about Lauma, and I wanted this video to be a bit more casual. Anyway, hope you found this video interesting, and as always, I'd really appreciate it if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. I know this video will be dropping shortly after, and I'm also preparing another video showcasing all of the new Nodikrai weapons. Thanks for watching, and see you very soon.